Chances are that if you have clicked on this video, your AFM examination is quite near. And if that is the case, you are at the right place because I'll be sharing over some tips which I have personally used to score a really respectable mark in the paper. And these are also tips which I've noticed through mistakes that students make in their own papers, students have taught, right? So I'll be going over all of them in a very concise format as to not waste your time and my time, right? So I'm Neil Rawat, right? I'm an AFM tutor and I personally scored a world rank 2 in AFM. Anyways, let's let's get on with it, right? So I have assembled 6 tips, right? And I've sort of placed them in logical order, right? And we'll start with the first tip, which is a quick scan. Now, many students, when they attend the paper, what I have noticed is students don't give time to read the paper at all, right? The exam is about 195 minutes long, right? You can take 2 to 5 minutes out of your time, right? That is about 1 to 2% of your total time allotted just to quickly read over through all the questions present in the paper. Many students, they start with section A and they don't know what's in section B, and then all of a sudden, let's say they have consumed too much time in section A and then they step over to section B. uh, they are not mentally prepared for what's ahead, right? Because you don't know what's in section B, you don't know the two questions in section B. So take 2 to 5 minutes, right? 5 minutes is the max time you would take, right, to read through everything. Usually it would take 2 or 3 minutes to just quickly read through what's there in all the three questions to understand what you'll be facing forward, right? You'll need to understand if the seas are rough, if the seas are smooth, right? Personally for you. So it's just 1 to 2% of your time allotted, but these 1 or 2% can mentally prepare you for the exam ahead. Now, again, this is just a small example, but let's say um, person A, right? Person A does not look at what's at section B, which is basically risk management and mergers and acquisition, and they start with APV, right? Which is the first question. What if they are not good at APV, right? What if APV is not the strongest suit, right? So a quick scan lets you also understand which question should you be starting with. What I personally recommend is starting with your strongest sector. Right, do not start with your weakest because it will set out a lower confidence level for the rest of the exam, which is not good. Right, so start off with the question you're most confident about, which would have happened if the person viewed all the three questions. Because if they had, they would have figured out that maybe they would have started out with mergers and acquisitions, which is share exchange, because that is their strongest suit. Maybe APV is not their strongest suit, right? And then they would have progressed in order of their, uh, the question they are comfortable with, right? So this is about the quick scan, very necessary according to me, because it lets you understand what order do you want to attend the questions in. Next is momentum. All right. Momentum is a very underrated concept. It's not even for AFM, it's for pretty much every exam out there, right? Every ACCA exam or any examination in general. You need to make sure that every minute you are dedicating towards that exam is adding to a particular total, right? It's adding to your total. You do not want to be stuck 20, 15, 25 minutes sitting on one requirement and wondering why you're not getting it right. It's going to be a very, very big um, time waste, first of all, and second, it's going to decrease your probability of passing the actual exam, right? So keep your ego aside, right? You might have learned the concept, but maybe due to exam pressure you do not remember it at the moment. So learn to keep your ego aside and learn to move on. Okay, that is the main thing I tell my students too, right? Because you don't have a lot of time at hand. It's a very uh, you have a lot of time pressure onto you, and I've assumed, right, that you have taken out 2 to 5 minutes. That is why it says the exam is 190 minutes long, right? So I've assumed that you have taken out 2 to 5 minutes to first scan through the entire paper, right? So again, let's take a look at two people. Just a small example. Let's say the first person, right, because they found a certain requirement in the APV question, right? They get stuck in it, right? And they are thinking to themselves that no, I have done this in the exam kit and I just have to solve it somehow. And because of them not letting that slide, right, not letting their ego aside, they waste another 25 minutes on the requirement, right? And that 25 minutes will result in a domino effect down the exam, because what you'll see is even though they have managed to solve both the questions, they don't have enough time left for mergers and acquisition, which is hardly 20 minutes, right? And 20 minutes is not a lot for any section B question, right? So it has a domino effect, right? That is why you need to keep your momentum, you need to keep your pace. And that is why if the person, right, had let that requirement go, they would have, uh, taken in a deep breath and just said, let's just move on. We'll come back to this later. You would see that they have spread their time proportionately, right, almost proportionately equally among all the three questions, time wise, right? So this is what I say. Momentum is very important. Do not get into a time trap. Do not give a requirement too much time than needed, right? Let's move on. The third tip is make up some numbers. Imagine this, right? Just imagine this. You have 20 minutes left on the clock. And let's say you plan to do section A last and you have 20 minutes left on the clock and you're currently on some NPV calculation. And you're currently stuck at a working capital requirement. Right? This is maybe a working capital requirement you're not able to understand to the question, right? You have maybe not done it before since you don't have enough practice, right? So again, do not waste time over here because I will show you two scenarios over here. Again, let's take person A, right? So person A spends 10 minutes figuring out the calculation, right? So 10 minutes just to figure out the working capital requirement, which is hardly worth 1 or 2 marks at max in the entire calculation, right? So if you're spending 10 minutes just to get 1 or 2 marks, that is not efficient at all, right? And let's say the next 10 minutes the person spends discussing, right? Just writing down the report. In these 20 minutes, person A has managed to only bring up 5 to 6 marks, which is not a lot, right? Very bad efficiency of time over here. 20 minutes was 5 to 6 marks is not a lot, right? What if person A just, they said, all right, I can't figure out working capital at the moment, right? It's not a substantial figure. I will just make up some random figure in my head, right? I'll just make up some random figure and I'll spend the rest 19 minutes discussing because my discussions are still left. I still need to make the report. That is much more important. And person A, if they were to take up this strategy, right, which is spend a minute making up some random figure and spending 19 minutes discussing, they would end up with more than 9 plus marks, right? Which is a much more efficient allocation of your time. And this entire thing exists due to the own figure rule which ACCA has introduced, right? It has been a lot of time since then. So basically, you can just make up figures which you are not that sure about, right? You don't know, you don't want to waste time calculating that figure. Let's say you're short on time, so you just make up some random figure and put it in. Okay, there would be no marks cut, of course, other than the working capital requirement because you just put in your own figure, right? So again, go with your own figure rule and go follow this. All right. So whenever you're short on time, whenever you're wasting too much time on a particular requirement, just make up some numbers. The fourth tip is the scenario is the hidden treasure. All right. I've seen many people, they mug up a lot of theory, right? They wrote, learn a lot of theory, but when it comes to actually applying that into the paper, it's always a blank, right? It's always uh, it's not a beautiful thing to look at answers which have just been taken straight from the textbook and put right into the question, right? Because it doesn't relate to the scenario, right? And the second thing which I want to bring forward is many people don't exactly know a lot of theory in the first place, right? So that is why I always say the scenario is the hidden treasure because it will give you a lot of points to write on. So even if you have not learned a lot of theory, even if you don't know a lot, right, you can still piece together a lot of sensible points using just the scenario. For example, if we look at this, country ABC has experienced civil unrest and periodic conflict until recently when a new government came to power. And let's say a company is trying to invest into this new country. Let's say there's a question in that particular main question, which deals with risks. And the risks, let's say you have not studied political risks from the study text or from the study hub or anywhere. You have no idea. You can still piece together a point or two through this information, right? You can write down political risk through this information. You can also write out, for example, effect on the cost of capital, right? Since, since the cost of capital will be raised, because there's a lot of political risks in the certain country, right? Because the government is not that stable. So what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to put together over here is that you can take a lot of pointers from the information itself. All right. The next tip is professional marks, right? So when we talk about professional marks, there are four areas which are graded on, right? The most important one is professional skepticism, which many people tend to not exercise at all. I've seen many students personally who will see a certain requirement, right? And it won't ever click to them that, hey, this is, somewhere out of the norm. And the thing is, the main problem, people are not able to identify things out of the norm, is because they lack question practice in the first place. But chances, if you're watching this video, you can't do much about that, the entire area of practicing more questions. So I'll just focus on what's at hand, what you can do at hand right now in this current time limit. And that is, try to identify things which are not, don't make sense, logical sense. For example, inflation rate will remain the next for the next 10 years. Not logical at all, right? You can't really predict 10 years into the future and say inflation rate will remain the same, right? So that is something you'll have to question when you're writing out your report. The international project will be discounted at the previously used cost of capital. This is also something which is out of the norm, because you'll not be using the cost of capital which you have been using domestically for your projects internationally, because internationally the risk differs. Maybe the business which you are entering into itself differs, the financial structure differs, right? There can be 100 numerous variables which will change the cost of capital. So you always have to exercise skepticism, right? Do not take things at face value. Always exercise skepticism and you'll get those sweet marks. Because let's face it, 20 marks of your 100 marks are based on these professional marks, and you can earn them very, very nicely. The second thing is commercial acumen, right? Commercial acumen basically relates to the previous tip which I was talking about, and that is make use of the context. All right. Be aware of the business area the company is operating in and pass recommendations that make strategic sense as well. Okay. Do not just focus on the figures. Don't just see, oh, there's a $3 million NPV positive, and you'll just say, go ahead with it. Right. Make some strategic notes. Right. Explain to the board of directors why it makes strategic sense as well as monetary sense. Right. And always use information from the scenario. Right. Be aware of the caveats of that certain industry, right? So if you're talking about, the plane industry, maybe environmental harm, right? You'll want to be aware of that because they use up a lot of fuel, right? So this is just basic business sense that should be there while you're writing down the reports, right? Anything that can affect the company in the long term should be mentioned, right? The third is communication. This is also something I've seen many students lack. Please, people, maintain a proper heading and subheading, right? This is not a letter which you're writing to your friend. This is a proper report which you're piecing together for the board of directors. Your board of directors aren't your friends. Just place yourself in the shoes of a financial manager and think that if you were writing a report to your manager, would you really write it out as informally as you're writing it right now, or would you put together a proper report which has proper headings, subheadings, introduction, body, conclusion, and of course, a third person view to it. Okay, do not put a first person, right? Please follow all these norms. And the most important is, please keep your discussions and your Excel separate, right? Do not put your discussions in the Excel spreadsheet. It looks very bad, first of all, and second, you're going to lose out on marks, right? So keep both of them separate. The next one is analysis and evaluation, right? Whenever you have done calculating, right, you are done with the calculations, please do some thorough analysis on it, right? Exercise your judgment, give some insights on the calculations you have done, and please give proper recommendations and advice based on that analysis you have conducted. All right. So these are the four professional marks visible in the AFM paper, and these are quite easy to grab if you know what you're doing. The last one is know your spreadsheets, right? Many people haven't even. I've seen many people go into AFM without even giving a mock, right? And then they go into the spreadsheets, especially many people who are working, and they wonder why many of the shortcuts which they have been using in their job are not working in the paper. I'll tell you this: only certain very simple basic functions work in the actual spreadsheet software for ACCA. Control C, Control V, Control Z are what I would recommend using. Okay, you can use NPV, IRR, MIRR functions. I had seen a particular student who had sit down to calculate MIRR in the exam. Please do not do that. You have a very simple function equal to MIRR and you can use it. Okay. Do not sit and calculate MIRR. Uh, and then, of course, use self-referencing, right? It's much easier for you. So even if there's some change, right? Let's say 30 minutes, 40 minutes down the line, you realize something's wrong. You can easily just change up one figure and it will reflect across the entire pro forma because you won't be using absolute figures, right? You'll be referencing yourself. So, maybe E78 and so on and so forth, right? So do not write down the actual figure, which is, let's say, $120. Just reference the cell so it's much easier for you to make any changes. And the fourth one is very underrated but very important, and this is how many people mess up their answers, and that is take care of the brackets, right? uh, Make sure some basic mathematics is in place, right? You know how brackets work and how the exponential function in Excel works, right? So these are all the basic tips I would go over. The most important tip I would say before your exam day is please stay calm, right? Have a good night's sleep, right? And watch something for a change, right? Maybe turn on some Netflix, maybe go play some games, spend time with your family, whatever, right? So just take it easy. You doing today, if you're watching this a day before your exam, nothing's going to change, right? You can't do anything in one day that will have a substantial impact on your exam, right? Revision, if you want to revise something, you can go ahead, but really just take it easy. So at the time of recording this video, your exam would be tomorrow, right? So all the best for tomorrow, right? Give it your all. It doesn't matter what the result is, as long as you have put in the effort, right? For the people who are watching this, let's say you have a lot of time until your ACCA examination, and you feel like you want some guidance, you want classes, you want a structured learning process to make things much easier for you, right? Instead of figuring it out for yourself, please visit my website, right? AFM Advantage. We offer courses over there, and it's a very I would say, well put through process altogether, right? Will make your journey much easier and much more, uh, less time taking, much more efficient, I would say, right? Thank you so much, and all the best for tomorrow.